Hello everyone, it's Annie and I'm here today with my December wrap-up of 2023. I read 15 books in December and it was a pretty even split. It was a mixed bag of ratings. I had a lot of 5s, 4s, and 3s. And the lowest rated one, as always, I will start with, and then the last book that I talk about will be my favorite book. The lowest rated one might be a little controversial. Yeah, it is Fourth Wing. I listened to this with my girlfriend, and it wasn't terrible. I thought. I did not think it was terrible. Oh my God, I'm so sorry about the lighting. It was just not good. It was okay. I hated Xaden, the love interest. So if you somehow don't know what this is about, it's about 20-year-old Violet Sorrengail, who's supposed to enter the scribe quadrant, living a quiet life among books and history. But the commanding general is her mother, and she orders Violet to join the hundreds of candidates striving to become the elite of Navarre, dragon riders. And then she has to go through dragon riding school and bond with a dragon, and then she meets this guy whose family was part of a rebellion in the past, so he's kind of like shunned, but he's handsome. Yeah, so they have kind of a thing. It wasn't bad. I know some people are like, wow, this is really terrible and everyone who likes this is stupid. I don't agree with that. I think it's good. It's made to be mass market fantasy. It's made for people to like it. I did not like Xaden or the love story at all. He was very, he was really basic. He was a basic, edgy love interest. You know, he can control shadows and he's so edgy all the time. And you should stay away from me, Violet, because I'm not good for you, and you know, all that kind of stuff. I was not into that. I really loved the dragon parts though. I really loved Violet's dragon and everything about that. The twist at the end though, I have to say, did get me. I'm not going to read Iron Flame because I just don't have the desire, but the twist at the very, very end did get me. Although I hated the last chapter because it was from Xaden's point of view, and it just made me hate his character even more than I already did. So yeah, I mean, if you're into dragons, I do recommend you give this book a read, but it's really not, in my opinion, all that special. All right, the next book is Land of Milk and Honey by Sipam Jung, and this is their sophomore novel, I believe. They published another book called All of These Hills Are Gold or something along those lines. It's historical fiction, which I really want to read. This book is a dystopian cli-fi. I've been into cli-fi lately. It was not what I really wanted it to be. It's very short. It's about this chef, this classically trained French chef who is living through this climate crisis. So there's smog everywhere and it's destroying the world's crops and food supply. So everyone has to rely on these like genetically engineered, on this sustenance that isn't real food, but it gives you nutrition. And so she's out of a job because no one needs a classically trained chef in these conditions. Until she gets a mysterious job offer from this mysterious hill in Italy, or mountain in Italy, where all these rich people gather, and she's hired to cook them food because they have like a hydroponics lab and they're growing all these specialty food items, and they can source all these specialty food items because they're rich. And she takes the job. And that's what I'm gonna say. It's sapphic, which was a pleasant surprise. I didn't know that going in, but this book didn't really explore what I wanted it to explore. It didn't really go into the sci-fi aspect of it as much as it could have, I think. This is very much lit fic, and I think that it was too short. If it was longer, like 100 pages longer, it could have done more with what it had. The characters, I did not really like any of them. The book focused more on their weird, abusive weird relationships than it did the actual state of the world. I really liked the food descriptions, but that's really all I liked, and the fact that it was sapphic. So this was a 3, because I didn't hate it, but yeah, it is a 3. All right, another fantasy. This is The Stardust Thief by Chelsea Abdullah. This has been on my radar for quite some time, and it's a chunker. But December for me, as you'll see with this list, is always a month where I want to read really thick fantasy books for some reason. I know that's kind of the opposite of what a lot of people do. A lot of people read novellas in December, but for some reason, the cozy winter just makes me want to read really thick fantasy books. So this is an Arab-inspired fantasy, and I did rate it a 3. It follows Luli al-Nazari, who is the Midnight Merchant, a criminal who, with the help of her jinn bodyguard, hunts and sells illegal magic. When she saves the life of a cowardly prince, she draws the attention of his powerful father, the Sultan, who blackmails her into finding an ancient lamp that has the power to revive the barren land at the cost of sacrificing all jinn. With no choice but to obey or be executed, Luli journeys with the Sultan's oldest son and one of his infamous 40 thieves to find the artifact. Aided by her bodyguard, they must survive ghoul attacks, outwit a vengeful jinn queen, and confront a malicious killer from Luli's past. So, I know that this is a series I will not be continuing. It has nothing to do with the actual quality of the book, nothing to do with anything like that. I think this is a very fine fantasy, and I know that I am the outlier in this. There are so many 4- and 5-star reviews out there, so please go check those out. This was just a me problem. I just could not get into this book. I felt that the world building was really cool, but the characters for me, they didn't jump off the page. They felt kind of flat for me. I didn't connect with them or root for them, and I just couldn't get into the story at all. I found myself getting lost and my mind wandering quite a bit. So this was not for me, but I really do think that if you're into fantasy and are especially looking for Arab-inspired fantasy, that you should still check it out. Another 3 is Yours for the Taking, and this is very disappointing for me because this is one of my most anticipated reads of 2023. I had to wait all that year to get to it, and it was just a 3. Yeah, I didn't love this. It's about The Inside. So The Inside is a series of huge buildings that are built across the world. We follow specifically the one in New York City in this book, but there's multiple ones. And we're dealing with a climate crisis. Again, this is a cli-fi, another one. And the world is basically becoming unsafe to live in. And you can apply to live in the inside, which will keep you safe from the weather and also from people, other people. So people apply, but obviously not everyone is going to get in. And the catch is with this inside, the New York City one, that only women are allowed, or let's say non-males are allowed. And that's a big deal. That's a really big problem. So this novel is a debut, and it tackles some really, really big ideas. Very difficult ideas to really do justice, and I don't think this did as good of a job as it needed to. Something about this book rubbed me the wrong way. There's great representation, there's great sapphic, non-binary, and trans representation here, but something about it just really rubbed me the wrong way. It deals with the fact that, yeah, this person, this crazy female millionaire is trying to build her feminine utopia with no men allowed, and she's trying to rebuild society if there were no men to mess it up. And like, on the surface, that sounds like, okay, maybe that's a good idea, but it's not. And it tries to delve into that about how power corrupts whether or not you're a man or not. But it just, I don't know, there was so many points of views, there were so many different facets of the story, and I think that it really, really tried very hard. Hi, Chickpea, but it just missed the mark. And I think a lot of people feel the same way about it. There is a sequel coming out. I'm not I'm not gonna pick it up. It's an interesting cli-fi, definitely an interesting concept, but yeah, I'd say it's not my favorite. All right, the last 3-star is Heaven Official's Blessing, Volume 1. This is a Chinese Danmei novel, and I really wanted to read it for the longest time. Sadly, I won't be continuing with the series. I will read this author's other Danmei, which is it inspired the Netflix show The Untamed. I forget the name of it. And I will try others, but this one just didn't work for me for multiple reasons. It was so slow. The romance doesn't start to happen until the end of the book. And the writing was really hard for me to get through. I'm so sorry. I'm sure it's a combination of me not understanding specific cultural references that, I shouldn't need to be told about, but I just don't understand it because it's not something I grew up with. And also just the translation not being quite up to par because the writing was very hard to get through. And there were just certain things like a lot of sexist stuff happening. I don't know. I see why people like it. I feel like if I had read this when I was like 15, 16, then I probably would have enjoyed it a lot more. But I just think it's not my thing anymore, and I respect that. I respect it. If you're into it, I respect it. But I really hope to read another Danmei novel that I like better. So if you have a recommendation that you think I'll like better than this, definitely let me know. Okay, now for 3.5, we had Lone Women by Victor Laval. I read The Changeling by him and I really, really liked it. So I was excited to pick up his newest release. This is, 3.25 maybe, 3.5. It is it's a weird book. It's a horror novel, but it starts out quite slow. It follows Adelaide, who carries an enormous steamer trunk with her wherever she goes. It's locked at all times because when the trunk opens, people around her start to disappear. The year is 1915 and Adelaide is in trouble. Her secret sin killed her parents, forcing her to flee California in a hellfire rush and make her way to Montana as a homesteader. Dragging the trunk with her at every stop, she will become one of the lone women, taking advantage of the government's offer of free land for those who can tame it. Except that Adelaide isn't really alone, and the secret she's tried so desperately to lock away might be the only thing that will help her survive the harsh territory. It was definitely an interesting part of history that I never thought about or really learned about before. These lone women who took advantage, as exactly as the synopsis said, to be able to own land in a time when they weren't allowed to. It just was boring. I'm really sorry. Nothing really happened until the very end, and I liked Adelaide, but I really wish it was more horror. I just needed more from it. It didn't get very horrific until the very, very end. So I know it's a mix of historical fiction and horror, but I really wanted a little more horror with it. It was slow while also being short, so I'm not sure how that works. But yeah, it was a little bit disappointing because I really, really wanted to love it. But 3.5 is not bad. All right, now we're into the 4s. We have another cli-fi. This is The Light Pirates by Lily Brooks Dalton. And if you've watched my channel, you know that I also read her book, Good Morning Midnight, last month or the month before, which I really enjoyed, and I really enjoyed this. This is sapphic, surprisingly. It surprised sapphic at the end, which I really appreciated. So this is a cli-fi about a girl named Wanda, and she is born during a hurricane in Florida, a really devastating hurricane that is her namesake. And she's named after this hurricane. And Florida, during the time that she's growing up, is slowly sinking below the waterline, the ocean level, because of climate change. And she and her caretaker decides to stay in Florida while all these other people are evacuating. And she stays in this waterlogged land, and she becomes like someone who can navigate this dystopian wilderness really well. And there's also a little tiny bit of speculative like fantasy in here. And it just kind of shows how human beings would potentially be able to evolve and change society to live through a changing Earth. And it was very, very good. Definitely different than what I thought. The beginning is slow. I have to say the beginning is slow, but once it gets to the second half of the book, it's awesome. I really, really enjoyed it. There are definitely upsetting things in here. Lots of death, lots of disaster. So definitely check out content warnings, but there's especially a relationship in here. It's not romantic. It's between Wanda and her caretaker. That is just so special and really tender, and just, I love it so much. It's like a parental figure for her. And I just really, really, really loved that relationship. It reminded me a lot of Ellie and Joel from The Last of Us, which is one of my favorite things ever. So if you're into The Last of Us, definitely check out this book because I think you'd really, really enjoy it. All right, another 4-star. This was a cover read. Just gotta admit it right now. This is A Bright Heart by Kate Chen Lee. This is a YA. I mean, look at this cover. It's just absolutely stunning. Okay, this is a revenge story, so that's fun. Ming-Xin outsmarts 3 princes to help the man she loves become king, but she doesn't see his betrayal coming, not until she's lying in a pool of her own blood. As she's dying, Ming-Xin makes a desperate plea to the gods to turn back time and give her another chance to make things right. Then she wakes up 2 years earlier, her prayer granted, and swears 2 things. Ren, the man who killed her, will never become king, and she will never fall in love again. That obviously doesn't happen. But the timeline in this life has changed. A dark force is threatening her kingdom's peace, and Ren's thirst for power runs deeper than Ming-Xin could have imagined. She finds herself allying with Jie, another contender for the throne. Ming-Xin knows better than anyone not to give her heart to a prince, but in the viper's nest of the royal court, she and Jie prove a phenomenal team. Can she avert the catastrophe of her past by once again learning to trust and maybe even love? Yeah, I love this. This is, another YA Chinese-inspired court fantasy. It's really good. I mean, if a book manages to make me root for a straight couple romance, then it's good. And this did that. Ming-Xin and Jie have a really great kind of, not quite enemies, but they hate each other, so hate to love kind of relationship, and I really, really like that. It reminded me quite a bit of Darcy and Lizzie from Pride and Prejudice, that kind of dynamic, and I love that dynamic, so I really, really enjoyed this book. I thought it was quite clever, quite great writing. Ming-Xin was a really cool character to follow. And she has really nice relationships with all of the side characters as well. All of the characters in this book are really, really well fleshed out. And I think that this book is kind of overlooked. I really haven't seen it very many places on Bookstagram or Booktube. So definitely check this out. This is a great YA Asian fantasy. Another 4-star was Heartstopper Volume 5. Yeah, Volume 5 already. And there's not much to say because if you know Volume 5, you've been following Nick and Charlie's story. Very cute. I really liked it. I didn't like it as much as other volumes, but it's definitely leading up to something big in the 6th and final volume. So I'm looking forward to that, and I hope that one will be a 5-star. All right, the last 4-star is Shoot the Moon by Issa Arsène. And this is a light sci-fi. It's historical fiction, takes place in the 60s, 1960s. About a girl named Annie who works for NASA as a secretary, but she also has a background or a bachelor's in astrophysics. And one day she finds a mistake in their paperwork that she's typing up, and she gets promoted basically. And it's very, very interesting. She is a wonderfully fleshed out character, and she's also bi. She has a romance. There's 2 different timelines, 2 different romances in here. One with a woman, one with a man. I like both of them. They were both very interesting, very different from each other. I really loved Annie's relationships with her parents. Her relationship with her mother and her father are very different from each other, so I really liked exploring those through flashbacks. The little bit of sci-fi that's in here is great. I understand why it's a small part of the book, but personally I would have enjoyed more sci-fi because I tend to prefer harder sci-fi than lighter sci-fi like this. But that's a me thing. That's not a problem with the book per se, because that's how it is. That's how it was advertised to me. The little bit of sci-fi that's in here is done very, very well. And it alters the structure of the story. So the story is told kind of jumping through time. And I saw some reviewers say that that was confusing to them, but I didn't find it confusing at all. It felt very normal. And then once I found out why and how it was happening, it was really, really great and kind of like a little bit mind-blowing. I think this is a great, great debut, and I definitely want to read more from Issa Arsen. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I thought the character of Annie was great, the little sci-fi was great, and it's a very unique story. All right, now on to the 5 stars. First, we have a sci-fi horror, Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. And I really, really liked this. I liked it more than I thought I would, to be honest with you. I think I found a new genre that I really love because I love horror and I love sci-fi, and I never really read something that puts it both together like this, and I loved it. So this follows Claire Kowalik, who is days away from being unemployed and made obsolete when her beacon repair crew picks up a strange distress signal. With nothing to lose and no desire to return to Earth, Claire and her team decide to investigate. What they find is shocking. A ship called the Aurora, a famous luxury space liner that vanished on its maiden tour of the solar system more than 20 years ago. A salvage claim like this could set Claire and her crew up for life, but a quick search of the ship reveals something isn't right. Whispers in the dark, flickers of movement, messages scrawled in blood. Claire must fight to hold on to her sanity and find out what really happened on the Aurora before she and her crew meet the same ghastly fate. Yeah, this was really cool. Very interesting. I think inspired by the Titanic. Very, very cool story. Claire was a great character to follow. A little bit of an unreliable narrator because you can't really tell what's real and what isn't. I loved the mystery of this, and it was genuinely frightening and very surprising in some parts. And her crew were all very fleshed out, very different personalities that really made the book come to life. There is a little bit of a romance, like essential romance, and I get why it's in there, but I just don't think it was necessary. But it didn't really detract from the book that much, so I'm still giving it a 5 because I really enjoyed everything else about it. She's a great writer, S.A. Barnes, and I'm definitely going to read her next book, which is called Ghost Station, coming out in April. The next 5-star is The Ivory Key by Akshaya Raman, and I bought, because I loved it so much, I bought the Owl Crate edition off Pengo, and just look at the naked hardback and the inside cover. I'm obsessed with it, and it's signed. I really, really love this, way more than I expected to, I gotta be honest. This is a YA fantasy. It is a duology. The second book came out in November, just this past November, and I'm still waiting for my hold from Libby. I have it on hold and I'm waiting because I want to read it. This is a great book. It is a sibling story, and I really love that. So let's get into it. Vera, one of the siblings, is desperate to get out of her mother's shadow and establish her legacy as a revered queen of Ashoka. But with the country's only quarry running out of magic, a precious resource that has kept Ashoka safe from conflict, she can barely protect her citizens from the looming threat of war. And if her enemies discover this, they'll stop at nothing to seize the last of the magic. That's such an amazing thing about this book. The magic system, so unique. I have never seen another book that does this, where magic is mined from quarries, and it's a finite resource, and that is just such a cool thing. Vera's only hope is to find a mysterious object of legend, the Ivory Key, which is rumored to unlock a new source of magic. But in order to infiltrate enemy territory and retrieve it, she must reunite with her 3 other siblings, who have been torn apart by the different paths their lives have taken. Each of them has something to gain from finding the Ivory Key, and even more to lose if they fail. Ronak plans to sell it to the highest bidder to escape his impending political marriage. Caleb, falsely accused of assassinating his mother, needs it to clear his name. And Rhea, a runaway who cut all family ties, seeks the key to prove her loyalty to the rebels who want to strip the nobility of its power. They must work together to survive the treacherous journey, but with each sibling harboring secrets, the very thing that brought them together could tear apart their family and the world for good. That's amazing. That's so cool. Yeah, this is masterfully done. I really, really enjoyed this, and I want to see more people reading it. The siblings' personalities are so different from each other, so interesting to read. They all have point of view chapters, which is great, and sometimes that can get overwhelming for me if there's more than like 2 point of views, but this balances it really well. And I really want to see more from Caleb. I really like him, and I hope that in the next book we get more from him. Really great. I love this, and this is South Indian inspired if I'm not wrong, and I think more people need to read it. I love it. The next book, The Darkness Outside Us by Elliot Sheffer. Such a surprise, a pleasant one though. This follows 2 boys alone in space. They're sworn enemies sent on the same rescue mission. Ambrose wakes up on the coordinated endeavor with no memory of the launch. There's more that doesn't add up. Evidence indicates strangers have been on board. The ship's operating system is voiced by his mother, and his handsome, brooding shipmate has barricaded himself away. But nothing will stop Ambrose from making his mission succeed, not when it's to rescue his own sister. In order to survive the ship's secrets, Ambrose and Kodiak will need to work together and learn to trust each other, especially once they discover what they're truly up against. Okay. This book is severely mismarketed, let me tell you. First of all, it's marketed as a YA gay romance that happens to be set in space. That's not what it is. This book is, honestly, I would call it adult. I think it would have been more successful marketing-wise if it was adult. Because there's some really, really mature stuff that happens here, and it's just a really, really great sci-fi book. So this is adult, and it is sci-fi first and foremost. The romance is not the main part of the story at all, which I was fine with that. I really like these 2, and they're kind of Russian and American coded, although they're not called that, those countries in the story, but he's Russian and he's American, Italian American. I thought that this book was funny, it was funny at times, when it needed to be. I think maybe the humor was a little heavy-handed because it was YA. I could have stood to be a little more serious, but I understand why, and I thought that it was funny. It's so much more than the synopsis, and I don't want to give it away because the twists in here are mind-boggling, okay? It is scary, it's terrifying. The twists in here will change your life, I'm not even kidding. I can't say more, I really want to say more, but literally you are on a wild roller coaster ride. Like, you think one thing and then whoop, like another thing's happening, and whoa, another thing. And I love it so much. I was just, while listening to this, I was like, wait, what? What's going on? Are you serious right now? It is just so twisty, so surprising in the best way possible. This is 5 stars, and you need to read it if you haven't already. Don't wait so long like I did. Please, please read this book. All right, last 2. First, we have a queer space opera, These Burning Stars by Bethany Jacobs. I really like this. It was really, really good. I mean, a queer space opera is hard for me to not like, so it's not a surprise that I gave this 5 stars. It was great. It's also a very complicated story, lots of point of views, so it's a little difficult to explain, but let me try. On a dusty backwater planet, occasional thief June Ironway has gotten her hands on the score of a lifetime, a secret that could raise the kingdom, the ruling power of the galaxy. A star system away, preternaturally stoic Chono and brilliant hothead Essek, the 2 most brutal clerics of the kingdom, are tasked with hunting Jin down. And tracking all 3 of these people across the stars is a ghost from their shared past known only as Six. But what Six wants is anyone's guess. It's a game of manipulation and betrayal that could destroy them all, and they have no choice but to see it through. This book is awesome. This is the first in a trilogy. I will absolutely be waiting for the second with bated breath. I cannot wait for it. Essek is one of the most interesting evil characters I've ever seen, and I love following her. June is a really cool sapphic character, and Six is just, like it said, throughout all of their points of views. And this is first and foremost a story of revenge, and I absolutely love that. The world building, top notch. It gave me just enough that I'm like begging for more, but I'm still really interested in the story, you know? I love it. I love all of the religion in it. I really love sci-fi space opera novels that have religion in them, and I just love it. I love it so much. I can't really explain more because, like I said, it's a big book. I kind of am confused also about why it's only released in paperback and it wasn't given a hardback release. So if anyone knows about that, please let me know, because I kind of want to buy it, but only if it's hardcover, because that's just how I am. I mean, I might buy it eventually regardless, but anyway, I really enjoyed this. Cannot wait for the sequel and the third one. And if you're looking for another queer space opera, look no further. All right, the last book and my favorite book of the month was Mennewood by Nicola Griffith. And this book is stunning. Look at this stunning cover. I just absolutely adored this. I'm trying to figure out how to hold it so that the light doesn't shine too much. This is the sequel to Hild, which is a historical fantasy novel that was released a long time ago, like over 10 years ago. I did read it when it came out. I don't remember most of it, and I didn't read it again before reading this. So if that's your fear of not starting this, don't be scared, because I don't think you need to reread Hild. Honestly, I don't think you need to read Hild at all, but you should. This is ginormous, okay? Over 800 pages, I think. Oh no, actually, it's almost 700 pages. So not quite Priory level, but it's very, very long. But it's so worth it. It is seriously so worth it. It's historical fiction first and foremost, okay? It takes place in Britain, in 7th century Britain, which is like a time period that you really don't see a lot, like really early Middle Ages Britain. So a land of rival kings and religions poised for epochal change, okay? Hild is no longer the bright child who made a place in Edwin Overking's court with her seemingly supernatural insight. She's now 18, honed and tested, the formidable Lady of Elmet, now building her personal stronghold in the valley of Mennewood. But old alliances are fraying. Younger rivals are snapping at Edwin's heels. War is brewing. Not knowing whom to trust, Edwin becomes volatile and recalls his young advisor to court. There, Hild begins to understand the true extent of the chaos ahead, and realizes she must find a way to navigate the turbulence and fight to protect both the kingdom and her own people. She will face the losses and devastation of total war, and then must summon the determination to forge a radically different path for herself and her people. In the valley, her last redoubt, Hild draws strength from the fierce joy she finds in the natural world, as slowly her community takes root. She trains herself and her unexpected allies in new ways of thinking, learning what it means to gather and wield true power, as she prepares for one last wager, risking it all on a single throw for a better future. Yeah, so this story does amazing things. First of all, it is based on a real historical figure. She is one of the first, I guess you can call her a monk or cleric or something, a female, in Britain. And the way Nicola Griffith has obviously researched the heck out of her life and the time period is just so apparent in these pages. The setting is so evocative, so descriptive. You feel like when you're reading this that you are in a dark medieval forest. It smells like moss and wet earth, and it's cold, and you're eating hard cheeses and stale bread, and you're a medieval peasant with a horse, and you smell the horses, and you're waiting for war in your tents, and that is how you feel throughout the whole book. It is just so good. It's so amazing, and I feel like I'm not doing it justice because I can say it all I want, but you have to decide to read it, so please decide to read this. This book, and Hild as a character in general, does such a great job of bridging the gap between pagan and Christian Europe in this time period, because there's so much change happening in 6th century or 7th century Britain, and she really bridges that gap, and it's just absolutely phenomenal. And of course I love this book because it's sapphic as well, so that doesn't hurt it at all. But even if it wasn't sapphic, I would have loved this, I have to say. It's absolutely gorgeous and so worth it, and was the perfect book to read during my cozy December fantasy reading. All right, so that is it for my December wrap up. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to my channel for more bookish videos, and I'll see you next time. Bye!